May 11, 2021.
At 4:11 in the morning, a chilling call echoes through the emergency line. Operator.
Emergency services. What's your emergency?
They broke into my house. They tied us up. My wife, she's not breathing. They killed my wife.
That voice was Babis Anagnostopoulos, a 33-year-old Greek pilot. A husband, a father, a man who the world in just a few hours would hail as a hero. But behind his breathless cries, behind the story he told police, was a truth so twisted, so horrifying, it would take 37 days, thousands of headlines, and a baby's broken gaze to uncover. They looked like the perfect family. A young British woman full of life, beauty, and dreams, a proud husband, a charming Greek pilot, and a newborn baby girl who tied it all together. Carolyn Crouch was just 20 years old. Born in the UK, raised partly in Greece, she was vibrant, educated, a passionate soul with a warm heart. Everyone who met her said she lit up the room. In Athens, she fell in love with a man who seemed straight out of a fairy tale, Babis Anagnostopoulos, a helicopter pilot, clean-cut, soft-spoken, well-respected. He was 13 years older, but love doesn't care for numbers. They married in 2019 on a beautiful island. White sands, blue skies, wide smiles. By 2020, they had a baby. To the world, it looked like they had it all. Their Instagram was full of loving pictures. Vacation shots, romantic cuddles, the baby sleeping peacefully in their arms. It was a dream. Until the nightmare began. Because behind those carefully filtered images, behind the smiling family portraits, was a secret darker than anyone could imagine. And one cold May morning in 2021, the illusion shattered. Today, we are diving into one of the most shocking family cases in recent UK Greek history. A story of love, obsession, manipulation, and an unimaginable betrayal. This is the heartbreaking true story of Carolyn Crouch and the man she trusted most, who turned into her worst nightmare. Stay with us. Carolyn met Babis when she was just 15 years old. He was a helicopter pilot, handsome, mature, worldly. She was still in school, still forming her identity, but somehow his presence was intoxicating. He showered her with attention, flattery, and affection. He made her feel grown up, special, chosen. And soon, Carolyn fell head over heels. Their relationship escalated quickly. By the time she turned 18, they were living together. Not long after that, they got married on a dreamy island beach. White dress, barefoot in the sand, a drone camera circling them in the sky. It was romantic. But also controlling. Friends noticed she began pulling away. Less time with people her own age, less independence, more dependence on Babis. But she rarely complained. She smiled in pictures, cuddled her baby, and wrote about love. From the outside, they were the golden couple, but on the inside, cracks had begun to form. As months passed, Carolyn's behavior began to change. She grew quieter, more withdrawn. Family members said she looked exhausted, emotionally drained. And those closest to her began sensing something wasn't right.
Caroline had started keeping a digital diary, a private space where she poured out her fears, her doubts, and her pain. She wrote about arguments, about Babi losing his temper, about moments that felt cold, calculated, terrifying. One entry read, "I feel like I'm suffocating." She even spoke to a therapist about leaving him, taking her baby and running, that she was young, vulnerable, isolated. And Babi always had a way of reeling her back in. Apologies, gifts, promises, the classic cycle. Caroline was stuck in what looked like love, but felt more and more like a cage. On May 11, 2021, neighbors in the Athens suburb of Glikanera woke up to sirens. Police arrived at the family home around 6 a.m. What they found inside? shocked the entire country. Caroline was dead, strangled in her own bed next to her 11-month-old daughter. Bubby, in a state of horror, told the police they had been robbed, that masked men had broken in, that they tied him up, held a gun to his baby's head, and killed Caroline when she tried to resist. The story made headlines across the UK and Greece. A home invasion? A young mother murdered in front of her child? The public was furious. The police launched a manhunt. The government offered a reward for information. That something felt off. The crime scene was too clean, too organized, too convenient. And there was only one person left alive in that room who could explain it. Bubby played his part flawlessly. He cried on camera, he hugged Caroline's mother at the funeral, he held his daughter in his arms like a broken man. He gave interviews to news stations, said things like, "She was the love of my life, I'll never be whole again." He even stood beside police officers as they begged for tips about the supposed intruders. Everyone believed him. For 37 days, he was the grieving widower, the broken-hearted father, the victim. But behind his soft-spoken words was a chilling truth, one that was about to unravel. Because Babish forgot one thing. Technology remembers everything. And soon, it would expose his lies. Caroline's smartwatch became the first crack in Babish's perfect story. Investigators looked into her biometric data from the night she died. Her heart rate, logged minute by minute, revealed something horrifying. Caroline didn't die when Babish said she did. Her heart kept beating for hours after the supposed burglars fled. She died much later, when only one person was in the house with her. Babish. The data didn't lie. Then came Babish's own phone records. He claimed he was tied up the whole time, but the phone moved. It unlocked. It sent texts. The security camera footage he said the burglars destroyed, he deleted it himself, after Caroline was already dead. Everything he said began to fall apart. Bit by bit, the walls around him crumbled, and the police, quietly, began preparing for his arrest. But they had to wait for the right moment. In a cold and calculated move, police let Babish attend Caroline's memorial. He stood beside her grave. He gave another speech. He cried again. Crocodile tears. But what he didn't know was that investigators were watching him. And they weren't just watching. They were ready. Minutes after the ceremony ended, officers approached him. They told him they had new questions. Could he come to the station? He smiled, nodded, played along. But as soon as he walked through those doors, the truth came crashing down. After hours of interrogation, Babish broke. He confessed. He killed Caroline. Not in a moment of rage, not by accident. He planned it. He waited until she slept, sat on top of her, held his hand over her mouth and nose, and pressed down for more than 5 minutes until she stopped breathing. Their baby was lying next to her, and then he staged everything. Hung their dog from the stairwell to make it look like intruders had come. Smashed a window, tied himself up, called the police. He told investigators, "I did it, but I never meant to hurt her." It was a lie inside a lie, and the world, once full of sympathy for him, now turned in horror. When Caroline's mother learned the truth, her screams echoed through the village. This man, this monster who had kissed her cheek at the funeral, had murdered her daughter and held her baby as if nothing had happened. He lied to her. He held her hand. He cried fake tears, and now he admitted it all, coldly, like it was just a mistake. Caroline's mother said in court, "He didn't just take my daughter. He destroyed every memory I had of her." She begged for justice, not just for her child, but for her granddaughter, because little Lydia would now grow up without a mother, and with the terrifying truth that her father, her own father, was the killer. The trial began in May 2022. Babis tried to soften the blow, tried to say it was a crime of passion, that Caroline had been violent, that he lost control. But the diary said otherwise. The smartwatch said otherwise. The lies said everything. He was emotionless in court, almost robotic, while Caroline's loved ones sobbed in silence. The judge didn't buy a single excuse. Babis was found guilty of premeditated murder, animal cruelty, perverting the course of justice. He was sentenced to life in prison, no parole, no sympathy. Justice had finally spoken. But for many, especially Caroline's family, justice came too late. Lydia, just 11 months old when her mother was killed, too young to understand the horror, too young to know the monster holding her was her own father. In the days after Caroline's death, Lydia was seen clinging to Babis, smiling unaware. She became a symbol of innocence in a sea of darkness. But now, with the truth out, she was left an orphan. Caroline's mother, Susan, fought desperately for custody. She swore to protect her granddaughter from ever learning the lies too early. But how do you protect a child from a legacy soaked in blood? How do you tell her that her mother died young and her father killed her?
The courts granted full custody to Caroline's family. Lydia was moved away from Greece to the Philippines to grow up far from the tragedy. But no matter how far she went, the shadow of that night would always follow. When investigators opened Caroline's journal, they found something chilling. Page after page of pain. Loneliness, control, manipulation. She wrote, "I feel like I'm suffocating. He won't let me go. I want to escape, but I'm scared." She had tried to leave him several times, but Babis always found a way to reel her back in. He isolated her from friends. He made her feel small, unworthy. He told her no one would love her like he did. Classic control, classic abuse. Her diary wasn't just a record. It was a warning, one she didn't live long enough to fully scream. To the world, Babis was a handsome, charming man, a helicopter pilot, a devoted husband, a loving father. On Instagram, he posted cute family photos. In interviews, he said, "I will never stop looking for Caroline's killer." But the mask was made of paper, and behind it, a manipulator, a liar, a murderer. Experts later called him a textbook narcissist. He crafted his image carefully, smiling at the cameras, crying on cue, all while knowing he was the killer. He didn't break down during his confession. He didn't even flinch when describing the moment he ended Caroline's life. Because Babis didn't grieve Caroline's death, he grieved losing control. Greece was shaken to its core. The death of Caroline wasn't just another murder, it became a national wound. At first, everyone rallied behind the grieving husband. Candles were lit, tears were shed. But when the truth came out, it felt like betrayal. A country that had mourned with him now burned with rage. Thousands took to social media, posting photos of Caroline with the hashtag #JusticeForCaroline. Women across the country shared their stories, of partners who controlled them, of fear behind closed doors. Caroline's death wasn't just personal, it sparked a national reckoning on domestic violence. Because if it could happen to her, it could happen to anyone. Babis Ananastopoulos walked into court, clean-shaven, suited, and expressionless. He didn't look like a man who had murdered the mother of his child. He looked like a businessman on his way to a meeting. But the evidence against him was undeniable. His lies, his cover-up, his cold-blooded control. Caroline's family sat in the courtroom, barely able to look at him. The prosecution called it what it was, a brutal, premeditated act committed with cold calculation. The defense tried to shift the blame. They painted Babis as emotionally distressed, as if stress gave him the right to choke a young mother to death.
but the jury saw through it. In 2022, he was sentenced to life in prison. The courtroom didn't erupt in cheers. There was no applause, just silence, a quiet kind of justice, but never enough. Inside his prison cell, Babis remains emotionless. Some say he's still convinced he did nothing wrong, that he was pushed to the edge. That's how narcissists survive. They rewrite the story until they're the victim. He reportedly told fellow inmates, "I didn't mean to kill her." But the facts don't lie. He held her down. He silenced her screams. He killed her. Slowly, intentionally. And then he went to bed. The only remorse Babis ever showed was for being caught. And every time he looks in the mirror now, he doesn't see a husband or a father. He sees the monster that the world finally recognized. She wanted out of the cage she was in. She tried, she reached out, she left behind pages and pages begging to be heard, but the world didn't listen soon enough. Now, her words echo in every woman afraid to speak up, in every mother trying to escape. Caroline may not be here, but her voice grew louder after death than it ever was in life. Because now, we are listening, and we must never stop. This story ends where it should have never begun. A 20-year-old girl full of dreams, a baby girl robbed of a mother, a man who played the victim while being the villain. But Caroline's name lives on, not as a statistic, not as a headline, but as a wake-up call. Her death ignited national fury. It opened conversations about abuse, control, and the hidden lives so many endure. She is remembered in every protest chant, in every courtroom where women now find their voice, in every parent who teaches their child that love should never hurt. Caroline Crouch should be 24 years old today. She should be holding her daughter, laughing, living, but instead, we hold her memory and we fight for justice, for awareness, for every Caroline still out there. This is not just her story. It's a warning, and it's a promise. We will not forget her. We will not stay silent. Not again. Caroline Crouch's story isn't just another tragedy. It's a haunting reminder that sometimes the danger doesn't come from strangers, but from the ones we trust the most. A young mother full of life, silenced by the man who once promised to protect her, her smile gone, her voice erased, and her daughter left to grow up with the truth carved into silence. No sentence, no apology, no prison cell will ever bring her back, but remembering her story, sharing it, keeps her name alive. If this case broke your heart the way it broke ours, if you believe Caroline deserved so much more, please like this video to honor her memory, and tell us in the comments, what do you think justice looks like in a case like this? Your voice matters, and together we can make sure her story is never forgotten. Rest in peace, Caroline. You were failed in life, but we will remember you in truth.